The air in Brooklyn is thick. It is not just the humidity of late summer. It is the smell of 1,000 different lives pressed together. Today, it smelled like roasted corn, diesel exhaust, and the sweet, sticky promise of sugar from a churro stand. Salsa music pulsed from speakers tied to a lamppost, making the pavement vibrate under my feet. I am Ava Morales, and I am 30 years old, and on this day, I was just trying to get a cannoli. That is the God's honest truth. I was navigating the street fair, dodging strollers and teenagers who walked like they owned the concept of an entire borough. My day job involves sifting through the wreckage of families, trying to glue the pieces back together for the kids caught in the cracks. It is noble work, people say. Mostly it is heartbreaking, and it pays just enough to keep me in this city and in cheap coffee. So a cannoli felt less like a treat and more like a requirement for survival. I was 3 feet from the pastry stand when it happened, a blur of pink. A small body collided with my legs, locking on with the kind of desperation that is usually reserved for a favorite toy. I looked down. A little girl, maybe 2 or 3 years old, had her face buried in my jeans. She had dark curls and was trembling like a leaf in a high wind. A nanny, young and pale with sheer panic in her eyes, was rushing forward, her mouth open in a silent scream, her hands reaching for the now empty stroller. Mia, no, the nanny whispered, her voice cracking. But before I could speak, before I could peel the child off my leg and hand her back, a different sound cut through the salsa music. It was the low, predatory growl of an expensive engine, moving too slow. I looked up. A large black sport utility vehicle, the kind that looks like it is designed to intimidate entire countries, was gliding alongside the curb. It was spotless, a void of polished black in the chaos of the colorful fair. Then, the rear window lowered. It was a smooth, silent motion. I did not see a face. I saw the sun glint off something metallic, a tube, a barrel. Time stopped. The music, the crowd, the smell of corn. It all froze. There was only the glint, the child on my leg, and the pale-faced nanny. My body moved before my brain gave permission. It is the only part of me I still trust from my short, failed attempt at medical school. Primum non nocere. First, do no harm. The corollary, I decided, was protect from harm. I roared down at the nanny. Not a request, but a physical command. I unhooked the child from my leg, scooped her up against my chest, and used my body as a battering ram. I grabbed the handle of the stroller and the arm of the nanny in one motion and shoved all 3 of us backward into the nearest stall. We crashed into a mountain of plush, oversized bananas and rainbow-colored llamas. The man running the game stall shouted something about payment. Then the sound came. A rapid series of pops. Pop, 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 pop. It sounded like the popcorn kettle 2 stalls down, finally exploding. A controlled, metallic rain. I held the little girl, my hand clamped over the back of her head, her face jammed so hard into my shoulder I was surprised she could breathe. I pressed her and the nanny against the flimsy plywood of the stall. I could feel the girl's small heart hammering against my own ribs, or maybe that was my heart. It was impossible to tell where she ended and I began. The popping stopped. In the silence that followed, I heard a high, thin whistling sound, a red balloon, tied to the stroller handle, deflated with a sad sigh. Then another, a blue one. They wilted like dying flowers, ripped open. They looked like lungs that had just given up. No one screamed. Not yet. The music had stopped. The entire street fair held its breath. Then, the doors of the large black vehicle opened, not with urgency, but with a terrifying, deliberate calm. 4 men in dark suits emerged. They were large, and their jackets were unbuttoned, their hands casually near their waists. They did not scan the crowd for a threat. They scanned the crowd as if the crowd itself was an inconvenience, something to be managed. One of them spoke into his wrist. The back door opened. He stepped out. The men formed a loose diamond around him as he walked. He was tall, and his suit was a shade of gray so dark it was almost black. It was perfectly tailored. a stark contrast to the sweat and sticky fingers of the fair. He moved with an economy of motion. Nothing wasted. His face was all hard lines, a strong jaw, and a straight nose. But it was his eyes that held me. They were gray, the color of smoke on a windless day. Cold, assessing, and utterly empty. I knew who he was. Everyone in New York who read more than the sports pages knew who he was, even if they pretended not to. Luca Moretti. The newspapers called him a reclusive millionaire, a financial wizard who had built an empire in logistics and private equity. The whispers on the street, the whispers my job sometimes put me close enough to hear, called him something else. They called him the consigliere, the financial owner of an empire built on shadows and old-world arrangements. He walked directly toward our pile of stuffed bananas and trembling humans. The nanny was weeping silently. The little girl was cemented to me. Her tiny fingers knotted in my shirt, her face still hidden. Luca Moretti stopped 5 feet away. His gray eyes took in the scene. He looked at the weeping nanny. He looked at the pop balloons on the stroller. He looked at me, covered in plush toy fuzz, and the small, dark-curled head of the child in my arms. His gaze lingered on the girl. A fractional change occurred in his face. It was not a softening, exactly. It was more like a glacier acknowledging the sun existed. Then he did something I am sure the gossip columns would pay a fortune to see. He smiled. It was not a real smile. It was the memory of one, a slight upward pull of one corner of his mouth, like a muscle remembering an old exercise. It appeared, lingered for a second, and was gone, vanishing back into the ice. His voice was low, a cultivated rumble with a faint trace of an accent I could not place. It was smooth, like expensive whiskey. "Finally, my dear," he said, and the words seemed to fill the entire street. Someone real. My mouth was dry. My heart was doing a frantic salsa beat against my ribs. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, leaving the metallic taste of fear in its wake. I should have been quiet. I should have handed the child over and backed away. But my mouth has always been 2 steps ahead of my brain. "I was just here for the cannoli," I said. My voice came out as a breathless croak, half giggle, half sob. His expression did not change, but his eyes drilled into me. He knew I was terrified, and he knew I was trying to cover it. I tightened my grip on the little girl, my hand still shielding her head. I could feel the frantic, tiny pulse in her neck, a bird's heartbeat, not my own. Sirens wailed in the distance, late to the party as always. The police, the crowd, which had been frozen, now began to murmur. Cell phones were emerging, pointed our way. A police lieutenant pushed through, his face red and annoyed. He looked at the suits, at the big vehicle, and then at me. His eyes, unlike Luca Moretti's, were not cold. They were angry. He looked at me like I was the source of the problem, the reason his day had just gotten complicated. Luca Moretti ignored the policeman. He spoke to me, his voice still low, but now it was a command disguised as a request. "The crowd is upsetting her," he said, nodding at the child. "Bring her to the car. We will leave." I looked at him. I looked at the car where a gun had just appeared. I looked at the lieutenant who already hated me. And I looked at the child in my arms, who had not made a sound, who was simply vibrating with terror. "No," I said. The silence that followed my word was heavier than the one after the gunshots. One of the bodyguards tensed, shifting his weight. The lieutenant's jaw dropped. Even Luca Moretti seemed, for a microsecond, surprised. I stood up slowly, untangling myself from the stuffed animals. I kept the little girl on my hip. She was a solid, warm weight. "I am not putting her back in that car," I said, my voice clearer now, harder. "You can walk with me. I will take her to the police precinct down the street. It is public. It is safe. You can have your men clear the way." I was offering him a negotiation, not a challenge, a way for him to maintain control while I maintained the child's safety. I was a child welfare worker. Deep down, this was what I did. I created safe spaces in the middle of disasters. Luca Moretti watched me for a long, unblinking moment. I could feel him weighing me, calculating. He was measuring my resolve, and I was trying not to let him see how my knees were shaking. Then he gave a curt nod, just one. He turned to the lieutenant. "We are walking. Clear a path." He did not wait for an answer. He fell into step beside me. His men moved like a well-oiled machine, forming a protective bubble around us. The crowd parted. The police, led by the fuming lieutenant, walked ahead of us. It was the strangest parade in Brooklyn's history. Me, a 30-year-old social worker in jeans, Luca Moretti, the phantom of the financial world, in his perfect suit, and a silent, terrified child, her face still pressed firmly into my neck. He was true to his word. He did not try to take her. He just walked. He was letting me set the pace. He was respecting the boundary I had drawn. It was a strange, unsettling feeling. Men with that much power, the kind of power that brings guns to a street fair, do not usually respect boundaries. They demolish them. We reached the steps of the 78th precinct. The brick building looked solid and safe, even if I knew what went on inside. I stopped and turned to him. I gently tried to shift the girl, to hand her over. She whimpered and tightened her grip, her tiny nails digging into my skin. "It is all right," I murmured to her. "You are safe now." Luca Moretti put his hand on her back, a large, impossibly gentle hand. "Mia," he said. Just her name. She did not release me, but she turned her head. She looked at him, her eyes wide and dark. "It is Ava," I said, realizing he did not know my name. "Ava," he repeated. It sounded less like a name and more like an assessment. He reached into his suit jacket. My body tensed, a stupid, reflexive flinch. He was not reaching for a weapon. He pulled out a small, incredibly thick card. It was pure white, with no text, no phone number. In the center, embossed in the heavy stock, was a single, elegant fleur-de-lis, a lily. He pressed it into my hand. His fingers were warm. "If you need anything," he said, his gray eyes locked on mine. "Call?" I almost laughed. Call what a blank card? The adrenaline and the fear had finally curdled into something else, a hot, sharp anger. I looked at the card, then at him. I let a small, hard smile touch my own lips. "I just need to know who targets a child," I said, my voice low and fierce. He did not flinch. He did not react at all. Just held my gaze. He took his daughter, Mia, from my arms. She went to him, her own small arms wrapping around his neck, her face finding the same spot in his shoulder that she had found in mine. He turned and walked away, his men closing ranks around him. He did not look back. I stood on the precinct steps, my arms feeling empty and cold. I looked at the blank card in my hand. The embossed lily felt sharp against my palm. And in the back of my head, a voice, one that sounded a lot like my grandmother, whispered the old tired warning, "Ava, Mija, do not ever trust a man who has a beautiful smile." Especially, I thought, when he only uses it once. I closed my hand, crushing the card. The card was heavy in my pocket for days. It was just paper, but it felt like a stone, a weight I could not get rid of. I never went into the precinct. I had stood on those steps until Luca Moretti's car was long gone, and then I had turned around and walked back into the noise of my own life. I am Ava Morales. I am, by trade, a protector of children. My business card, if I had one that mattered, would say child welfare investigator. But that is only half of it. I am also a nonprofit financial investigator, which is a polite way of saying I follow the money that abusers and corrupt institutions use to hide their sins. I am the person who looks at a clean ledger and finds the single, dirty fingerprint. I was supposed to be a doctor. That was the plan. I spent years learning how to put people back together, but I quit medicine. I could not stand watching the system break them first. I saw the foster care system up close, the way it was a series of cracked ceramic pieces held together with cheap glue and good intentions. When a child falls through, they do not just hit the floor, they shatter. I decided I was better at finding the cracks than I was at mending the breaks. My cynicism, like most people's, was earned. It was delivered to me 3 years ago, gift-wrapped by a man I thought I loved. His name was Ethan Ward. He was a cop with the city precinct, all sharp blue uniform and a smile that promised safety. I trusted him. I told him about my cases, about the kids I worried about. I told him about a group of teenagers in a private shelter who were showing strange symptoms, who seemed over-medicated and listless. He used that information. He used me. He was not protecting those kids. He was protecting the shelter. It turned out to be a front for a pharmaceutical company, running illegal drug trials on minors. Ethan was their inside man, their shield, taking kickbacks to make sure no one looked too close. When I found out, when I pieced it together, I did what I was supposed to do. I became a whistleblower. I filed a report. I went to the press. And I lost everything. In a single week, I lost my job. I was evicted from my apartment under a flimsy pretext, and all my good, supportive friends evaporated. Ethan Ward, of course, was protected by his badge and his connections. He was investigated and cleared. I was labeled unstable, a disgruntled employee, a liar. The only person who did not leave was my Aunt Rosa. My Aunt Rosa, she was a retired librarian from the main branch, a woman who believed the Dewey Decimal System was a form of sacred text. She lived her life organized by files and stored her most precious things, which were mostly other people's secrets, in old-fashioned tin boxes. She took me in, gave me her tiny guest room, and never once told me I should have kept my mouth shut. "Truth, Ava," she told me, her hands smelling of old paper and peppermint. "It always exists, usually in the things people are most desperate to throw away." 2 months ago, Aunt Rosa was thrown away. She disappeared in an apartment fire. The official report from the fire department said it was an accident, faulty wiring, an electrical short, a tragic, simple explanation for a woman who lived a quiet, simple life. I did not believe it. I do not believe it. Aunt Rosa was meticulous. She unplugged her toaster every single night. She did not die because of faulty wiring. She died because she found something. Which brings me to my current, glamorous life. I am surviving. I work part-time at a community clinic in Queens. It is mostly data entry and helping families navigate insurance forms that are designed to make them give up. It is honest work. It keeps me off the street. And it was there, 2 weeks after the street fair, that the world decided to shrink. The nanny from that day, the pale, terrified one, brought the little girl in, Mia. I saw her name on the intake form. The nanny recognized me instantly, and her face went even whiter, if that was possible. She looked at me like I was a ghost. "He said you were," she stammered. He said, "Dr. Evans will see us." I was not there to see her. I was there to file her paperwork. But I saw the doctor's notes afterward. Dr. Evans, a kind, overworked man, had made a diagnosis. Mild post-traumatic stress disorder. The little girl, Mia, had a severe fear of loud, sudden noises. Gunshots, or even popcorn machines exploding, would send her into a state of panic. My hands were cold as I processed the file. And then I saw the line for legal guardian. The name typed in the box was not Mia's mother or father. Luca Moretti, relationship uncle. The pieces were clicking into place, and I did not like the picture they were making. Luca Moretti, the man from the street fair, the reclusive millionaire. I knew the public story. He was an angel investor in logistics technology. He made shipping containers smart. He was a pillar of the new clean New York. But I also knew the street story, the whispers you hear at the clinic, in the bodegas, the stories that never make it into the financial pages. The street story said Luca Moretti was the tesoriere, the treasurer for the Moretti crime family. This was not his father's mafia. This was a new breed. No street brawls, no gaudy jewelry. This was a mafia of hedge funds and shell corporations. Clean paperwork, they said. But the methods used to get that paperwork clean, those were just as dirty as ever. I went home to my small, borrowed apartment, the one I took over after Aunt Rosa's fire. The air in it still felt thin. I was making coffee, trying to rub the chill from my bones, when I saw the package. It had been slipped under my door, a plain 9 by 12 manila envelope. No postage, no return address, my name. Ava Morales was written on the front. I stared at it for a long time. People in my old life got packages. People in my new life got eviction notices. This was something else. I opened it. The first thing I saw was the money. It was cash, used $100 bills, neatly bundled. I counted it. My hands were shaking. It was $60,000. Enough to disappear. Enough to start over, somewhere far away from here. My first thought was that it was a bribe, or a threat, a payment from Luca Moretti to forget what I saw. But underneath the money was a key, a small, silver key, the kind for a safe deposit box, and under the key was a note, folded in half. It was a single sheet of cheap, lined paper. 5 words were written on it. For Ava, do not run, dig. I dropped the money. I would have recognized that handwriting anywhere. The elegant, precise loops. The way she pressed the pen down on the final G. It was Aunt Rosa's handwriting. My heart was not just beating. It was trying to escape my chest. She was dead. I had identified her body. Or what was left of it. I had her ashes in an urn on my bookshelf. But this was her handwriting. My mind raced. Had she written this before she died? Was this a contingency plan? I looked back in the envelope. There was one last thing. Stuck to the inside, a piece of paper, thin and flimsy. It was a receipt, a carbon copy from a donation. It was for the Caduceus Foundation, a humanitarian biomedical fund. I had heard of them. They were a local charity, always in the news for their good work. They were affiliated with a private hospital, a fancy one, over in Queens. I was about to dismiss it as junk, something that had gotten mixed in, when I saw the logo. Printed in the top left corner of the receipt, faint but clear, was a small, embossed symbol. A fleur-de-lis, the same lily from Luca Moretti's blank, heavy card. I sat on the floor, the money scattered around me, the key cold in my hand. I looked at the receipt, and I looked at the note from my dead aunt. Do not run, see dig. I tell this story now like I'm recounting a rainstorm. It was not a surprise, really. It was just timely. And in New York City, you learn very quickly that every rainstorm, no matter how clean it looks from above, is connected to a sewer system. And I was just handed a map. The key felt wrong in my hand. It was too small to be this heavy, too simple to open a door that was clearly not meant for me. The bank was a quiet, gray establishment in Midtown, the kind that prided itself on anonymity. I signed Aunt Rosa's name, a forgery that was surprisingly easy, and my hand did not even shake. I was given the box in a private, soundproof room that smelled of old money and new carpet. I slid the key in. It turned. The box contained her smell, paper, peppermint, and a faint metallic scent. Inside, there was no jewelry. No stacks of bonds. There was an external hard drive, a small digital audio recorder, and a thick, old-fashioned double-entry ledger, the kind with green and red lines, all filled out in Aunt Rosa's perfect, meticulous script. I opened the ledger. It was not a personal diary. It was a mirror, a shadow ledger tracking another set of books. On one side, public donations to the Caduceus Foundation. On the other, private transfers from a series of shell companies. The names were bland: Apex Maritime Solutions, Tri-State Holdings. But at the bottom of each transfer page, noted in pencil, was a single name: Moretti Logistics. My blood went cold. This was not a map. This was a blueprint. It was a detailed accounting of how Luca Moretti's clean business was washing money through a clean charity. I put the book down and picked up the audio recorder. My thumb hovered over the play button. I was not sure I wanted to hear a voice from the grave. I pressed it. There was a hiss, the sound of a room, and then, her. Ava, she said, my aunt's voice, low, calm, and utterly alive. I choked, my hand flying to my mouth. If you are hearing this, the faulty wiring finally got me. A dark, dry laugh. Even in death, she had a sense of humor. Do not cry, mija. And do not run. You are not built to run. You were built to dig." The voice continued, her tone shifting from warm to firm. "The ledger shows the how. The drive shows the why. The names, the children, the trials. It is all there. But you cannot do this alone. The system will not help you. You know this. It will chew you up just as it did before." A pause. I could hear her take a breath. "You must take this to the man with the gray eyes, Luca Moretti." I almost threw the recorder. What was she saying? "He is not what you think," her voice insisted. "He is a man trapped in a cage of his own making. He owes me, and he owes Mia. Give him the data. He will know what to do. He's the only one who can burn it all down from the inside. Be smart. Ava, be brave. I will see you in the archives." The recording clicked off. He owes me, and he owes Mia. The words echoed in the silent, expensive room. How did she know Luca? How did she know Mia? The timeline did not make sense. The fire was 2 months ago. The shooting was 2 weeks ago. I packed everything into my bag, my mind a storm of impossible questions. I left the $60,000 in the box. I did not want money. I wanted answers. As if the universe had decided to test my resolve. He was waiting for me, not Luca. Someone worse. He was leaning against my apartment building's entrance when I got home, looking completely out of place in his expensive suit. Ethan Ward, my ex-boyfriend, the man who had taken my trust and turned it into a weapon against me. He was a lieutenant now, a promotion he had clearly earned on his knees. "Ava," he said, pushing off the wall. He used that smile, the one that I used to think was charming. Now it just looked like a threat. "Long time. You look stressed." "I am busy. Ethan, get out of my way." "Hey, I am just here to help." He held up his hands, a gesture of peace that was anything but. "I heard about the situation at the street fair. That was messy. Getting mixed up with a man like Moretti. People can get hurt." "Is that a threat?" "It is a friendly warning. I am a lieutenant now. I have resources. I can offer you protection. You are in over your head, Ava. You always did jump into the deep end." His offer hung in the air, and it smelled wrong, like burning plastic and old lies. He was not offering to protect me. He was offering to buy my silence, or maybe just figure out what I knew. "Protection," I said, my voice flat. "Is that what you call it? Like the protection you gave those kids at the shelter, the ones you sold out for a promotion?" His face hardened. The friendly mask slipped, revealing the rot underneath. "You should have kept your mouth shut then, Ava. I am giving you a chance to be smart now. Give me whatever you think you have. I will take care of it, for your own good." "No, thank you, Lieutenant. I said, pushing past him. "I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself." His hand grabbed my arm. His grip was tight, possessive. "Do not be stupid," he hissed. I did not pull away. I turned, slowly, and looked at his hand on my arm. Then I looked at his face. "You have exactly 1 second to let go of me, Ethan," I said, my voice quiet, "or I will start screaming about police harassment. Let's see how your resources handle that." He held on for another beat, his pride warring with his caution. He let go, his hand dropping away like he had been burned. "You are making a mistake," he said, his voice low. "It would not be my first," I replied, walking into my building without looking back. I locked my door, my heart hammering. Ethan was dirty, and he was connected to this, and he was scared, which meant Aunt Rosa was right. I was in the deep end. I copied the files, I made 3 backups of the hard drive, and took pictures of every page of the ledger. I put one drive in a locker at the Port Authority and mailed another to a post office box I kept under a false name. Then I took the copy of the ledger and the copy of the drive and went to find the man with the gray eyes. Aunt Rosa's recording said he owed her. I was going to find out why. He was not at his office. His logistics company was a fortress. I knew I needed a different approach. I remembered the way he had said Mia's name. I remembered her little body, clinging to him. I found him at St. Agnes Church. It was 4 p.m. The church was nearly empty, smelling of old incense, lemon polish, and the quiet of centuries. Afternoon Mass was a small affair, just a few old women and a priest whose voice echoed in the vast, empty space. Luca Moretti was not praying. He was sitting in the front pew. Mia was beside him, not sitting but coloring in a book on the smooth marble floor. He looked smaller in here, his broad shoulders contained by the sanctity of the place. He was just a man, watching his niece. I walked down the aisle. My footsteps were loud on the stone. He looked up, his head turning. His gray eyes showed no surprise. It was as if he had been waiting for me. Before he could stand, before I could speak, Mia saw me. Her face lit up, a wide, pure, beautiful smile. She scrambled to her feet, crayons scattering, and ran. She did not run to him. She ran to me. She hit my legs with a happy shriek and wrapped her arms around me. Burying her face in my coat, she was hugging me, like I was home. I froze, my hand hovering, and then I placed it on her dark curls, just as I had at the fair. I looked up at Luca. His face was a mask of stone. He was watching his niece, who was clinging to a stranger who had been shot at in her presence. She remembers me, I whispered, my throat tight. She does, Luca said. His voice was rough. He stood up, a large and imposing shadow in the house of God. What do you want, Ava? I did not waste time. I reached into my bag and pulled out the copy of the ledger. I held it out to him. He did not take it. He just stared at it. I found this, I said. It is a record of your company's donations to the Caduceus Foundation and the shell companies they came from. He looked at me, his gaze unreadable. Who gave you this? Here it was. The moment. I thought of Aunt Rosa. I thought of Ethan's plastic promises. A woman who is dead, I said, my voice clear and steady in the echoing church. She told me to find you. She said, and I quote, "He owes me, and he owes Mia." His reaction was not what I expected. He did not get angry. He did not deny it. He flinched. It was a small, almost invisible movement, a tightening of his jaw, a flicker in his eyes. It was the reaction of a man who had just heard a ghost speak. I pressed on, pushing my advantage. She also said something else. I am not here to blackmail you, Mr. Moretti. I am here because someone wants you to use your money to fix this, not cover it up. He finally looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time, the ice in his eyes was not empty. It was full of something dark and ancient. Pain. He took the ledger from my hand. I left the church feeling like I'd walked off a cliff and found I could fly, but the feeling did not last. That night, the Caduceus Foundation was holding its annual fundraising gala. I was at home, trying to figure out my next move, when a plain text message lit up my phone. It was from a blocked number. Gala is a cover. They are moving the teenagers tonight, Pier 5, Red Hook, 10 Post Meridian, to New Jersey. Do not let them. A cold dread settled over me. This was it. The drug trials Aunt Rosa had mentioned. The kids Ethan had helped cover for. It was happening now. I grabbed my phone. I knew who I had to call. I knew what the right thing to do was. Park. A sharp, clipped voice answered. AUSA Elena Park, the Assistant United States Attorney who had looked at my whistleblower case 3 years ago, listened to Ethan's lobbying, and promptly buried it under a mountain of paperwork. It is Ava Morales, I said with a heavy silence. Miss Morales, this is a surprise. I do not have time. I have evidence of illegal human trials on minors. They are moving the kids tonight from Red Hook in about 2 hours. Do you have this evidence in your hand, she asked. Her voice was cold, skeptical. I have ledgers. I have hard drives. Then bring it to my office tomorrow morning, she interrupted. Do not go anywhere near Red Hook. We will look at your evidence and determine if a warrant is appropriate. Do not, under any circumstances, try to be a hero. Miss Morales, we are not in the business of cleaning up civilian messes. The line clicked dead. I sat there, my phone in my hand. Bring it in tomorrow. By tomorrow, those kids would be gone, lost in another state, in another corrupt facility, their lives stolen by monsters. Elena Park was wrong. I was not in the business of cleaning up messes. I was in the business of stopping them before they became permanent. Do not be a hero, I muttered to myself. I grabbed my darkest jacket and headed for the door. I was going to be a hero. Red Hook was a desolate landscape of shipping containers and screaming gulls. Pier 5 was dark, a gaping mouth of shadows, but the tip was good. A refrigerated truck was backed up to a container. I could see men with flashlights moving in the dark. The container was marked with a small, almost invisible logo, a fleur-de-lis. I stayed in the shadows, my heart pounding. I just needed to get a picture. Something to prove this was real. I moved closer, hiding behind a stack of old pallets. I raised my phone. I zoomed in. I could see the side of the truck, Caduceus Foundation. A tiny red light appeared on the pallet in front of me, a laser sight. I froze. A sound, like a fast zip, tore through the air, and a piece of wood exploded next to my head. A sniper. Someone I could not see. From somewhere high up. They were not trying to warn me. They were trying to kill me. I dropped, rolling backward, my phone skittering across the pavement. I scrambled behind a concrete barrier, my breath tearing out of my lungs. Another zip. A spark flew as a bullet hit the concrete right where I had been. I was pinned. I was going to die here, in the dark, on a dirty pier. Ava. The voice was low, and it came from the shadows right behind me. A hand grabbed the front of my jacket, hard. It was not Ethan's angry, possessive grab. It was pure, desperate force. I was yanked off my feet, dragged from my flimsy cover and slammed against the metal wall of a different container. A hard, muscular body pressed me into the steel, shielding me. Zip, zip. The bullets pinged off the concrete I had just left. I was breathing so hard I could not see. My cheek was pressed against the cold metal. The man holding me there was breathing just as hard, his chest pressing against my back. "Are you hit?" he demanded. His voice was a low growl in my ear, sending a shiver through me that had nothing to do with the cold. I managed to shake my head, a tiny, jerky motion. He relaxed, but only by a fraction. He was still pressed against me, his hand flat on the container wall next to my head. I turned my head. In the dim light from the pier, I could see his face. The hard lines, the strong jaw, the gray eyes. It was Luca Moretti. He was not looking at me. He was looking up, into the darkness, scanning the gantries and rooftops where the sniper was hiding. And in his eyes, for the first time, I saw it. It was not the cold calculation of a boss. It was not the bored assessment of a millionaire. It was real, sharp, undeniable fear, and it was not for himself. It was for me. We were in his car before I had registered moving. He did not let go of my jacket. He half dragged, half carried me through the maze of containers, his body acting as a shield between me and the unseen sniper. The zips of the bullets stopped, replaced by the heavy slam of a car door, so thick it sounded like a bank vault closing. He was inside, behind the wheel, and the engine was a silent hum before I had even found my seatbelt. The car moved, not with a screech of tires in a panic, but with a smooth, terrifying surge of power. We were out of the pier and onto the highway in less than a minute. I sat in the silence, my breath sawing in and out. I could still smell the concrete dust from the bullet impacts. "You are shaking," he said. It was not an observation. It was an accusation. "I was just shot at, I said, my voice hoarse. "Twice. It tends to spoil the evening." He took a turn, too fast, but the car simply gripped the road. "You should not have come. You should have given the ledger to me and walked away." "And the kids in the truck," I shot back, the anger finally burning through the fear. "The ones being moved to New Jersey, was I supposed to walk away from them, too?" He was silent. His jaw was a hard line of granite in the dashboard lights. "Who was that?" I demanded. "The sniper. Was that your man cleaning up a loose end?" He looked at me then. His gray eyes were not cold, they were burning. He pulled the car to the side of the road, slamming on the brakes. We were under a dark overpass, plunged into near blackness. "If you ever," he said, his voice dangerously low, "ever accuse me of pointing a weapon at you again, we are finished. If I wanted you dead, Ava, you would be. I came here to stop the shipment. I came here because I knew you would be stupid enough to try it alone." "You knew?" "The text, it came from me. I was testing you. I wanted to see if you would run to the police or if you would run to me." "I ran to the police," I said, my voice small. "They told me to wait until morning." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Of course they did. And by morning, those children would be ghosts in the system. Like her. A heavy silence filled the car. "Her?" I asked. He looked straight ahead into the darkness. "Mia, she's not my daughter. I never told anyone she was. The press assumes she is my niece, my sister's child." He took a breath. "My sister was Elisa. She was bright, too bright for our world. She fell in love with a man my father hated. She wanted to leave, to take her baby and just be normal." "What happened to her?" I asked, though I already knew. "In my world," Lucas said, by saying his voice hollow, "you do not get to just leave. You do not quit. An order was given, a car crash was arranged. They made it look like an accident. But they let Mia live. A message, a warning. They took Elisa from me." "Who?" I whispered. "Who gave the order?" "The rumors say it was a man named Victor Dragan." He said the name like it was acid on his tongue. "He was my father's partner, from the old country. When my father died, I took control of the finances, the logistics. I tried to clean it, but Dragan mouthed, he preferred the old ways. He deals in things I will not touch. Illegal pharmaceuticals, human trafficking. The hard drive, Aunt Rosa's files, it all clicked." "Caduceus," I said. He looked at me, his eyes sharp. "What do you know about Caduceus?" "Aunt Rosa's hard drive, it is not just about your ledgers. Luca, it is about what Caduceus is doing. They are funding a network of private shelters for unaccompanied refugee children. And in those shelters, they are testing drugs, unapproved drugs, on children who have no one to speak for them." He did not look surprised. He looked tired. "Dragan's new market. He provides the test subjects. The pharmaceutical companies pay him under the table, and everyone gets rich. The perfect, untraceable supply chain. And it is funded by you," I said softly. "Indirectly," he snapped. "I control the money, yes, but I do not sign the checks for that. I did not know, not until your aunt started digging. And not until Eliza—" "Senator Halverton," I said, the pieces fitting together in my head. "His political action committee. It is funded by shell companies, your shell companies, and he is the one who pushes for the privatization of the shelter system. You see," he said, it was not a question, "it is a machine. A clean, legal machine that runs on the dirty parts of Dragan's world. I have been trying to cut him out for a year, but he has a cancer. If I cut too fast, he takes the whole family down in a bloody war, and I will not have that, not with Mia to protect." He turned to me, the dashboard lights carving shadows under his eyes. "That ledger your aunt gave you. It is my leverage. It proves the money laundering. But I need more. I need to tie Dragan directly to the murder of my sister. I need to cut him out, not with a bullet, but with a prison sentence. I am trying to make this empire legitimate for Mia. She deserves to be safe." I watched him, a mafia boss trying to use the law. It was the most ironic thing I had ever heard, and I believed him. "All right," I said, "if we are partners, we are partners. No more tests, no more secrets. You say my aunt's ledger is leverage, but it is only half the story. I need to see your books, the real ones. What you have is the real one." "No," I said, shaking my head. "What I have is a copy of a shadow. I need the master ledger, the one that shows every transaction for the last 20 years. I need to cross-reference the dates. I need to see what else lines up." He stared at me for a long time. "That is impossible. It is too dangerous." "You want to get Dragan," I said, my voice hard. "You want to protect Mia. You want to use the law? I am a financial investigator. This is what I do. You want to give me a gun? Go find someone else. You want to give me a database? I am your best hope. He started the car. He did not take me to his office. He did not take me to a high-rise. He took me back to Red Hook, to an old winery that looked abandoned. He opened a locked door, and we were in a vast climate-controlled wine cellar. In the center of the room, it was not a table, it was a server rack. The vault, he said. A network-attached storage drive. Every Moretti transaction for the last 2 decades, my father's and mine, encrypted and air-gapped from the rest of the world. He sat me at a terminal. You have 1 hour. I need more than an hour. You have 1 hour, he repeated. I will be outside. I dove in. It was a sea of numbers, but I had my compass Aunt Rosa's ledger. I began to cross-reference the shell companies, the transfers. It was all there. And then I searched for something else. I searched for the date of Aunt Rosa's fire. My breath hitched. It was not a big, obvious transaction. It was a small one and a consultancy fee, a payment of $50,000, routed through 3 countries and paid to a private investigations firm, a firm I had seen before, a firm linked to Ethan Ward. But there was another name in the memo line, a name I had not seen, Marco Bellini. Time is up, Lucas said from the doorway. I copied the file to a secure drive and stood up, my legs weak. I found it, I said, the payment for my aunt's fire. His face went white. I told you, I did not... I know, I said. It was not a kill order. It was an investigation order, signed by your family lawyer, Marco Bellini. The days that followed were a blur. Luca moved me into a safe house, a sterile apartment with a view of a brick wall. He said it was for my protection. It felt like a cage. Then the system began to fight back. It started with a phone call from Marco Bellini himself. He was smooth, his voice like expensive oil. He just wanted to clear up any misunderstandings. He was so concerned for my welfare. He wondered if I was feeling, perhaps, overwhelmed by recent events. It was a veiled threat, wrapped in a silk handkerchief. Then the article hit, a small, local gossip paper, but it was picked up online. Disgruntled social worker targets philanthropic foundation. They called me emotionally compromised and unstable. They dredged up my whistleblower case against Ethan, painting me as a vindictive ex-girlfriend. They were not using guns. They were using my reputation. They were discrediting me before I could even speak. I understood then. The enemy was not just Dragon. It was the whole system. The lawyers like Bellini, the politicians like Halverton, the reporters on the payroll. And then Ethan reappeared. He found me at a coffee shop. He looked terrible. He was sweating, and his eyes were darting. Ava, you have to stop, he said, sliding into the booth. Get away from me, Ethan. No, you do not understand. You are painting a target on your own back. On my back, they are cleaning house. Who? Ethan, your friends. The ones who burn old women in their apartments. That was not me, he said, his voice cracking. I just made the introduction. I thought they would just scare her. You have to give it to me, whatever you have, all of it. The drives, the ledgers. I can make this go away. I can cut a deal. I will tell them you are harmless. I will save you. From the feds and from Moretti. I looked at him. At this weak, terrified man who had sold his soul for a paycheck and was now trying to sell mine to save his own skin. I almost felt sorry for him. I stood up. You cannot save me from the truth, Ethan. I left him there and went straight to the United States Attorney's office. Elena Park, the Assistant United States Attorney, saw me immediately this time. I did not wait to be called. I walked past her secretary and into her office. You told me to wait until morning, I said, slamming the hard drive down on her desk. This is what happens when you wait. I told her everything. Dragon, Caduceus, the shelters, the dead children, Halverton, Ethan, and Luca. I told her he was my source. She listened, her face impassive. When I was finished, she tapped her pen on her desk. You are bringing me an uncorroborated story from a mafia boss, she said. And a hard drive full of evidence, I countered, and a dead ant and 2 bullet holes in a pier that have my name on them. Are you going to wait again? She was silent for a long moment. We cannot move on Dragan without a direct link. The ledgers are good for a financial crimes case against Moretti, but they do not stop the trafficking. We need a witness. We need to get inside that hospital. So get a warrant, I said. A warrant on what grounds your unstable testimony, she said, and I flinched. She had read the articles. We need something concrete, something that links the chief doctor at the hospital directly to Victor Dragan. We were stuck, and then I had the idea. I can get you inside, I said. Elena looked at me. How? Mia, I said, Luca Moretti is her legal guardian. He has her files. She's a patient at that hospital. The one affiliated with Caduceus. She has post-traumatic stress disorder from the shooting. She has a follow-up appointment in 2 days. They will not let you in. Elena said. They will, I said. Luca can sign a temporary authorization. Make me her educational and medical proxy, a guardian ad litem, for her trauma care. It is perfectly legal. I will be her trauma advocate. I can get into the doctor's office. A slow smile spread across Elena Park's face. A civilian undercover operation? This is insane and highly illegal for me to authorize. Then do not authorize it, I said. Just look the other way. Luca hated the idea. He argued, he yelled, he said it was a suicide mission. It is the only way, I insisted. We need to link the doctor to Dragan. This is how we do it. He finally agreed, on one condition. He provided the technology, a button camera, small, legal, authorized by his signature on the Guardian papers. 2 days later, I walked into the Queen's Hospital, my heart hammering. I was Ava Morales, concerned advocate. The chief doctor was a smooth, polished man. He condescended to me for 10 minutes. He assured me Mia was fine. He just needed to check her file on his computer. He took a phone call. He was annoyed. Yes, he said. The payment is ready. I have it. He hung up, grabbed an envelope from his desk, and walked out. I followed him. Doctor, I called. He ignored me. He walked to a private exit. I filmed everything. He stepped outside, into an alley. A black car was waiting. He handed the envelope to a man in the back seat. I zoomed in with my phone, holding it at my side, pretending to check a message, while the button camera did its work. The man in the car took the envelope. He was large, with a shaved head. He turned his head to say something to the driver, and the light caught his wrist. I got the shot, a clear view of his face, and a clear view of the tattoo on his wrist. It was Victor Dragan. I went back to the safe house, my hands shaking so hard I could barely unlock the door. I gave the footage to Luca. He watched it, his face like thunder. We had him, the doctor, the envelope, Dragan, it was the link. We were about to call Elena Park when Mia padded into the room, woken by our voices. She saw the computer screen, frozen on the image of Dragan. She walked forward, her small finger pointing. The snow, she whispered. Mommy did not like the snow. I looked at Luca. He was pale. What? He breathed. Mia pointed at Dragan's wrist, at the tattoo. It was not a snowflake. It was a complex, star-like design, a stylized, 8-pointed star, a snowflake. Elisa, Luca whispered, his eyes wide with a horrifying, new understanding. Her case file. The police report from the accident. The officer on the scene noted a detail. He found a man's silver cufflink on the floor of her car. He thought it was her boyfriend's. He logged it as evidence. It was engraved with a snowflake. It was not a cufflink. It was Dragan's marker. He had not just ordered the hit. He had been there. He had killed Elisa himself. And Mia, a tiny, 2-year-old child in the back seat, had seen him do it. The revelation that Mia had witnessed her mother's murder, that the snowflake was Dragan's mark, changed everything. The cold, sterile anger I had felt was gone, replaced by a hot, specific rage. This was not about ledgers anymore. It was about a little girl who had lost her mother. We gave the video footage and the story of the snowflake cufflink to Elena Park. For the first time, her professional mask cracked. She looked, finally, angry. "This is it," she said, her voice tight. "The Caduceus Foundation Gala. It is tomorrow night on Governor's Island." We were in her office, late at night. The city lights were a cold fire outside her window. "It is their biggest fundraiser," she continued. "Victor Dragon will be there. Senator Halverton will be there. The doctor from the hospital will be there. It is a money laundering banquet, disguised as charity. So you can arrest them." I said, "It was a statement, not a question." "I can," she agreed. "The ledgers you and Moretti provided, plus the video of the payoff, give me probable cause for a search warrant. I can seize their financials. I can raid the event, but it is a white-collar case. It is paper. To get Dragon for trafficking, for the murder of Elisa Moretti, I need more than a child's fragmented memory. I need a spark. I need a confession from inside his own circle." I looked at Luca. He was standing by the window, his back to us. He had been silent for an hour, a statue of pure, controlled fury. He turned. His gray eyes were not cold. They were the color of ash. "I know who to get," he said. "Marco Bellini, my family's lawyer." I remembered the name, the man who had ordered the surveillance on Aunt Rosa. "He is compromised," Luca said, his voice flat. "He is the only one, besides me, who knows how to read the master ledgers. He knows where Dragan hides the money from the trafficking, the money that never touches my books. Dragan knows this, and Dragan knows we are moving against him. Marco is a loose end. He must be terrified." Elena Park leaned forward. "You think you can flip him?" "I'm not going to flip him," Luca said. "I'm going to give him a choice. Witness protection or a grave." I did not see the meeting. Luca went alone. He returned to the safe house hours later, just before dawn. He looked exhausted. "He is in," Luca said, pouring 2 glasses of water. He handed one to me. His hand was perfectly steady. I explained the situation, cooperate with the United States attorney, and he gets a new life. Refuse. And I walk out of the room, and Victor Dragan's men find him before morning. "He agreed to wear a wire," I stated. "He did," Luca said. "He will be at the gala. He will approach Dragan. He will talk about the ledgers, about the risk, about the Elisa Moretti problem. He will get what you need. AUSA Park." The gala was a nightmare of glittering hypocrisy. We took a private ferry to Governor's Island. The lights of lower Manhattan sparkled across the water, a kingdom of diamonds. Rich men and women in expensive clothes were drinking champagne, laughing, bidding hundreds of thousands of dollars on art to save the children. My stomach turned. I knew these children. They were the ones in Dragan's containers, the ones in the Queen's Hospital. I was there as Luca's guest, and he was magnificent in a black tuxedo, a perfect mask of cold civility. He was one of them. He nodded. He smiled his non-smile, but his eyes, every time they met mine, were scanning. They were hunting. Mia was in a secure playroom set up for the gala's wealthiest guests, supervised by nannies. I had checked on her myself. She seemed happy, surrounded by toys, blessedly unaware of the monsters in the next room. I was standing near the silent auction when a voice I never wanted to hear again slid into my ear. "Ava, fancy seeing you here." I turned. Ethan Ward. He was not in a police uniform. He was in a tuxedo that looked almost as good as Luca's. He looked confident, relaxed. The sweating, nervous man from the coffee shop was gone. "What are you doing here?" "Ethan." "Security," he said, smiling. "Mister, Dragan is very particular about his security. He does not trust the federal agents at the door." He was admitting it. He was openly Dragan's man. "It is over, Ethan," I said, my voice low. "We know everything. Elena Park is here. Her team is, too." He laughed, a soft, genuine laugh that chilled my blood. "You really do not get it, do you? You have nothing. You think that hard drive you found is admissible in court, a civilian. You illegally accessing a private server that is fruit of the poisonous tree. It will be thrown out before the jury is even seated. I stared at him. Here is what happens, he said, leaning closer, his breath warm and smelling of gin. I am the lead investigator on your complaint. I am going to testify that you, a vindictive ex-girlfriend, hacked Moretti Logistics to frame me. Your evidence is void, and you, my dear Ava, will be arrested for cybercrimes and conspiracy. Dragon wins. I win. You lose, just like you did 3 years ago. My heart, which had been pounding, suddenly went cold and still. He had a plan. He was not just a corrupt cop. He was the entire firewall. He smiled, patted my arm. You should have taken my deal. He walked away, blending into the crowd. I was frozen, and he was going to invalidate everything, all of it. Aunt Rosa's death, Elisa's murder, all for nothing. I had to find Luca. I had to find Elena. I turned, pushing through the laughing guests, and I saw Luca across the room. He was near the catering entrance, speaking intently to Marco Bellini. The lawyer looked pale, his face green with sweat. He was wearing the wire. This was the moment. I started toward them, but something stopped me, a feeling, a cold dread. Mia. I changed direction. I ran to the children's playroom. The attendant, a young woman, was looking at her phone, laughing at a video. Where is Mia? I asked, my voice sharp. The attendant looked up, startled. Who? Mia Moretti, the girl with the dark curls. The attendant's eyes went wide. She looked around the room. Oh, she was just here. She must have gone to the restroom. But I knew. I ran from the room. I scanned the massive, glittering ballroom. She was not there. Then I saw it, a service door, propped open by a wedge, and on the gray carpet just outside it, a single pink crayon. I ran. I pushed through the door into a long, brightly lit service corridor. It was empty. Far down the hall, I saw a large man turning a corner. I only saw his back for a second, but the light from an overhead fixture caught his wrist. The snowflake tattoo. He had her. Mia. I screamed. I ran, my heels slipping on the polished floor. I did not care who heard me. I turned the corner, skidding into another hallway. A heavy, fireproof door slammed shut in my face. The thud echoed in the hallway. The magnetic lock clicked shut. I was trapped. Ava Morales. The voice came from behind me. I spun around. Ethan Ward stood there, his gun in his hand. How stupid, he said, shaking his head. We did not even need a plan. You just followed the bait. Where is she? Where is Dragon? He is waiting for you. We just needed to get you away from Moretti and your federal friends. He grabbed my purse, ripped it from my shoulder, and threw it on the floor. He took my cell phone. No calls for help. He gestured with the gun. Through that door. He's very excited to finally meet the woman who has been causing him so much trouble. He shoved me through a different door. The air that hit me was arctic. I was in a large, dark room. It was freezing. It was a cold storage chamber for the island's art auctions. Massive sculptures wrapped in plastic stood like shrouded corpses. Paintings were stacked against the walls. In the center of the room, bathed in the red glow of a single emergency light, stood Victor Dragan. He was a mountain in a tuxedo. And he was holding Mia. His massive arm was clamped around her waist. His other hand held a thick, black pistol. The barrel was pressed against her small, curly head. Mia was not crying. She was rigid with terror, her eyes locked on me. The snowflake, I whispered. My voice was gone. You were in the car. You killed Elisa. Dragan smiled. It was a terrible sight. She was weak. He rumbled, his accent thick. She talked too much. She wanted to run. In our world, you do not run. He shifted his grip on Mia. Your librarian aunt. She was not weak, just stupid. She found the old files on Elisa. She got too close, so I had her. Removed. He was confessing. He was confessing to everything right here. You are a monster. I breathed. I am a businessman. He corrected me. And you are a problem. Suddenly, the red emergency light went out. The room was plunged into absolute, freezing blackness. Dragan cursed, a low, animal sound. Ethan yelped, "What is happening? What did you do?" A distant alarm bell started to ring. The power. It was Luca. He had cut the power. Then, a voice, tinny and terrified, erupted from the darkness. It was coming from everywhere. It was Marco Bellini. "He has the girl. He's in the art storage. He confessed. He said he killed Elisa Moretti." Luca had not just wired Marco to Elena's team. He had patched him into the building's public address system. The main lights flickered, then slammed back on, blindingly bright. Victor Dragan was blinking, furious. Ethan was pale, terrified. And in the doorway, standing alone, was Luca. His tuxedo was perfect. His face was pale. He was unarmed. Dragan spun, keeping Mia in front of him, the gun still at her head. "You," he spat at Luca, "the boy king. You think you are clever. You have no weapon." "Let her go, Victor," Luca said. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the room. "Or what?" Dragan laughed, pressing the gun harder. "You will audit me." "Let the child go," I shouted. I stepped forward into the light. "Take me. She is a baby. She has seen nothing. I am the one you want. I am the one who found the files. I am the one who talked to the feds. Let her go." Dragan looked at me, then at Luca. His eyes were glittering with cruel amusement. "You are right. I do want you, but I do not need to trade." He swung the gun away from Mia's head and pointed it directly at my chest. "No," Luca said. He did not shout. He did not move fast. He simply raised his hands, palms out. He reached slowly inside his jacket, pulled out his own heavy silver pistol, and with a deliberate motion, he dropped it. It hit the concrete floor with a deafening clatter and slid to a stop. "You are right, Victor," Luca said, taking a step into the room. "No weapons. Just you and me. Let her go. This is about us. It was always about us." It was a crazy, desperate gamble, a sacrifice to buy a single second, to draw Dragan's focus. It worked. Dragan stared at the gun on the floor, then at Luca. He was confused. This was not in his playbook. In that half-second of hesitation, Ethan Ward broke. He heard the distant shouts, the alarms. He heard the confession broadcast over the speakers. He saw his world ending. "No!" Ethan screamed, his voice cracking into a sob. "You will not take me! You will not take me!" He raised his pistol. He did not aim at Dragan. He did not aim at Luca. He aimed at the witnesses. At the problem. At me. He fired. Pop, not pop, pop! I did not think. I moved. I dove, covering the last few feet to Mia, shoving her small body to the floor and throwing my own on top of her. Glass shattered somewhere. Bullets screamed, ricocheting off the concrete walls. "Federal agents," a woman's voice boomed, amplified. "Elena Park, drop your weapons. Drop them now." The doors I had been shoved through, the doors that had locked, burst open. A wave of black-clad federal agents poured into the room, weapons raised. I lifted my head. Victor Dragan stood frozen, his gun still raised. Ethan Ward was on the ground, clutching his side, a dark stain spreading through his white shirt, one of his own wild shots, or a return shot from the agents. He was gasping. Dragan looked at the agents. He looked at Luca. His face was a mask of pure, murderous hatred. Slowly, he lowered his arm and dropped his pistol. It was over. I was on the floor, my arms wrapped around Mia, who was finally crying. Great. Shuddering sobs that tore through her small body. Agents swarmed Dragan, forcing him to his knees, cuffing his hands. Other agents were securing Ethan, kicking his gun away. Luca did not move. He stood, watching them cuff Dragan. Then he walked past the agents. He walked past me. He walked to the middle of the room and dropped to his knees beside Ethan Ward. Ethan was coughing, blood on his lips. His hand was slipping from the wound. "Luca," The mafia boss, the man whose sister Ethan had helped murder, pressed his own clean, expensive hands over the wound. He applied pressure, his knuckles white. "Hold on," Luca ordered, his voice a low growl. "Hold on, you son of a bitch. You do not get to die yet." He was saving him. He was saving the man who had, seconds ago, tried to kill me. Elena Park walked in, her face hard. "Victor Dragon," she said, her voice ringing in the cold room. "You are under arrest for the murder of Elisa Moretti." I watched them lead Dragon away. I watched the agents call for a medic for Ethan. I just watched Luca. His hands were covered in the blood of his enemy, and he was trying to keep him alive. I looked at Dragon, a man who built an empire on the suffering of children. I looked at Ethan, a man who sold his conscience for a paycheck. I looked at Luca, a man trying to buy back his soul. In that cold room, surrounded by stolen art, I realized it. We all had. We had all chosen our own version of the truth, and we were all, in our own broken ways, willing to die for it. The aftermath was quiet. The explosion of the climax, the gunshots and the screaming had faded, leaving behind a silence that was heavy and absolute. The adrenaline left my body in a long, slow drain, and for the first time in months, I felt the bone-deep exhaustion of what we had done. The world reacted with predictable, swift hypocrisy. The day after the gala, Senator Halverton held a tearful press conference. He announced he was resigning from office, effective immediately, citing pressing health concerns and a sudden, profound desire to spend more time with his family. He was a rat fleeing a ship that was already halfway to the bottom of the ocean. Elena Park, the Assistant United States Attorney, was not a rat. She was a hawk. She descended on the Caduceus Foundation with the full, unbridled force of the federal government. The raid on their Gleaming Queens headquarters lasted for 2 days. They carried out servers, file cabinets, and every piece of paper. The media, which had once celebrated the Foundation's humanitarian work, now feasted on the carcass. Within a week, the entire national chain of private shelters that Caduceus funded was shut down, their operations frozen, the children inside finally transferred to legitimate federal protective custody. The Department of Justice announced a sweeping indictment, United States v. Dragon et alia. The et alia was a long, impressive list that included the chief doctor from the hospital, several executives from the pharmaceutical companies, and Senator Halverton, who was arrested on his way to the airport, and there, listed as the government's chief witness, was my name, Ava Morales. I had gone from being a disgruntled, unstable employee to a federal witness. The world had not changed, but the spotlight had certainly moved. Marco Bellini, the lawyer whose sweating face I still saw in my nightmares, had vanished. He had done his job, and Luca had kept his promise. Bellini was taken into the witness protection program, a ghost in a new, suburban life he probably hated. But before he disappeared, he gave Elena Park a final, devastating gift. He testified, on a sealed video deposition, to everything. He confirmed that the order to murder Elisa Moretti had come directly and solely from Victor Dragon. He testified that Luca, upon finding out, had been furious, but his hands were tied by Dragon's deep roots in the family. And Marco gave them the ledgers, the real ones. He walked Elena Park through the master accounts, showing her exactly what I had only guessed at for the last 2 years, ever since Elisa's death. Luca had been waging a secret, internal war. He had been systematically blocking Dragon's access to the family's shipping lines, freezing the accounts that funded the human trials, and slowly, meticulously, strangling the dirty money. He was trying to amputate the rot before it killed the entire Moretti empire. Luca, however, was not innocent. He was still a Moretti. He was still the man who had managed the finances of a criminal organization. He stood in a federal courtroom, not as a witness, but as a defendant. He looked smaller without his tailored suits, without his armor of power. He took a deal. He pleaded guilty to a single, lesser charge under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act related to financial crimes that had occurred before his sister's death. In exchange for this plea, he agreed to testify openly against Dragon and the entire network of doctors. He agreed to forfeit the vast majority of the Moretti assets, the money his father had built, the money that was stained with 100 different crimes. The judge sentenced him to 5 years of probation and fines so heavy they effectively dissolved his empire. Luca Moretti walked out of the courthouse, not as a mafia boss, but as a free man, a free and almost poor man. He'd given it all up. We moved into a new apartment. Luca, Mia, and I. It was a strange, quiet place, far from the noise of Red Hook. Mia had her own room, painted a soft, pale yellow. The city was restless, summer was ending, and the nights were punctuated by the sound of stray fireworks. The first time a bottle rocket shrieked in the street below, I tensed, my muscles bracing for the inevitable scream from Mia's room. I waited. The apartment remained silent. I crept to her door and pushed it open. She was asleep, her small body perfectly still, her breathing deep and even. She had not even stirred. She was in therapy. I had found the best child trauma specialist in the city. They played, they drew pictures, they talked about the bad man. They talked about the loud noises. I realized I was holding my breath. I let it out, a slow, shuddering sigh. I was learning, in these small, quiet moments, to trust the silence. I was learning that an adult's footstep in the hallway did not have to mean danger, that the world was not, perhaps, entirely built on lies. The $60,000 from Aunt Rosa's package was still in the safe deposit box. I had not touched it. It felt like cursed money, a down payment on a life I had never asked for. But it was not a curse. It was a seed. I knew what I had to do. I took all of it and filed the paperwork to create a non-profit foundation. I called it the Arclight Fund, a name for a small light in a very dark place. It was dedicated to one thing, providing legal and financial support for medical whistleblowers and for the children, like those in the shelters, who were abused by the very systems meant to protect them. I was going to build the shield that I had never had. I had a lunch meeting with Elena Park. She was victorious, the new star of the United States Attorney's Office. I asked her, my voice shaking slightly, if she would consider sitting on the advisory board. She looked at me from across the table, her gaze sharp. "Miss Morales," she said, "I think that is the first sensible idea I have heard all month. Yes." The ghosts did not all rest. One night, an email lit up my phone. It was from a randomized, encrypted address. There was no subject line. Inside, there was only a single image. It was a photograph of an old, dented tin box, the kind you would buy cookies in. Painted on the lid was a faded, hand-painted fleur-de-lis. It was Aunt Rosa's box, the one she kept her most precious files in, the one the police never found in the ashes of her apartment. My heart stopped. I was staring at the screen when a second email came through. It contained only 2 words. "Keep digging," and a single letter, R. She was alive. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the phone. She was alive, and she was out there. Somewhere, still digging. Not all ghosts were so welcome. A letter arrived, forwarded from my old address. It was from the prison hospital. Ethan Ward had survived the gunshot. He was recovering, and he was facing a long, long list of federal charges. His life, as he knew it, was over. The letter was 5 pages long, written in a shaky, sloppy cursive. It was a masterpiece of self-pity. He was sorry. He was sorry I'd gotten mixed up in this. He was sorry I had misunderstood his intentions. He said he had always loved me. He said he was the real victim, a man caught between impossible choices. He ended by asking if I would come and visit him, maybe speak to the prosecutor about his good character. It was an apology that never once said the words, "I did wrong." It was just another request, another manipulation. I read it twice, just to be sure. Then, I tore it into very small pieces and let them fall into the garbage. I did not write back. I was learning that a response was a gift, and he no longer deserved any. My silence was its own kind of judgment, and it was final. Luca was building again. Not an empire, but a company. A small, forensic security firm. He was using his genius for data and systems, not to hide money, but to protect it. His new clients were hospitals and medical research labs. He was designing systems to protect their data from men like Dragan, to ensure that patient files were secure. He came over every night. He said it was to see Mia, but after she was asleep, he would stay. We would sit in the quiet living room, the city lights a distant glow. We were awkward. Two people defined by chaos, trying to learn the language of peace. He looked different. The ice in his gray eyes had not vanished, but it had receded. It was no longer a wall. It was just a color. And in that color, I could see light. One night, we were reading Mia a story. She'd fallen asleep between us on the sofa, her head in my lap, her feet draped across his. His hand was on the cushion, next to mine. I could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. I had spent so much of my life being afraid of that kind of strength. I looked at his hand. It was large, the knuckles slightly scarred. It was the hand that had held a gun. It was the hand that had pressed down on Ethan's wound, saving his life. Slowly, I uncurled my own fingers. I moved my hand, just an inch, until my pinky finger brushed against his. He did not grab my hand. He did not flinch. He just turned his palm up, a silent offering. I slid my hand into his, our fingers interlaced. It was not a gesture of frantic passion. It was not a claim or a possession. It was just an anchor. We sat there for a long time in the silence, listening to a child breathe. We were just holding hands, and for the first time in my life, I was not hiding anything at all. Red Hook looks different in the daylight. The pier where I was nearly killed, the place where bullets sparked against concrete, is no longer a graveyard for shipping containers. It is a playground. We built it, or rather, Luca's forfeited assets, redirected by the city and the Arclight Fund. Built it. We call it Elisa's Light. It sits right on Pier 5, the dark, abandoned space, now reclaimed. The metal of the climbing frame is painted a bright, defiant yellow. The ground is soft mulch, smelling of cedar. Where the Caduceus truck once parked, there is a set of swings. I am sitting on a bench, watching Mia. She is going down the slide, her legs pumping, her face split in a wide grin. She shrieks, a sound of pure, uncomplicated joy, and lands in a soft pile of the mulch. She scrambles up and runs to do it again. Luca is leaning against the fence near the entrance. He's not wearing one of his perfectly tailored suits. He's in jeans and a gray cashmere sweater. He looks younger. He looks normal. He is watching Mia, and he is smiling. It is not the tight, controlled pull of his lips I saw at the street fair. It is not the ghost of a smile I saw in the church. It is a real smile. It is unguarded. It reaches his eyes, and it makes them look less like smoke and more like the sky. The world finished its rotation. The trial of Victor Dragan ended last week. It was long, brutal, and very, very public. Marco Bellini's testimony, combined with the unshakable digital evidence from the ledgers and Luca's own calm, precise statements, painted a picture so vivid that the jury was only out for 3 hours. Dragan was found guilty on all counts: racketeering, conspiracy, human trafficking, and the first-degree murder of Elisa Moretti. The judge, a woman who had looked at Dragan with open contempt for the entire 6-week trial, gave him a sentence that ensures he will die in a federal prison. Caduceus, the foundation built on the suffering of children, was dissolved by the court. Its assets, the art, the buildings, the offshore accounts were seized. They were liquidated and put into a massive restitution fund for the victims, the hundreds of children whose lives they had used as currency. It was an ending. It was justice, or at least the closest version our world allows. I was at the new Arclight Fund office a few nights later. It was small, just 2 rooms above a bakery, but it was mine. I was reviewing a new case, a nurse from a private hospital who was claiming they were faking cancer diagnoses to defraud insurance. The work never ended. My computer chimed. It was not an email. It was a voice-over internet protocol call from a blocked, encrypted, randomized address, the kind I now knew how to answer. I clicked accept, a hiss of static, and then a voice. Ava. My breath caught in my throat. I dropped my pen. I knew that voice. I had been hearing it in my memory for months, a ghost in my ear, the voice that smelled like peppermint and old paper. Aunt Rosa, I whispered. My voice broke. You are alive. A dry, familiar chuckle came through the speaker. Of course I am. Mia, you think some faulty wiring can take me out? I am a librarian. We are tougher than that. I was crying, silent, hot tears running down my face and dripping onto the desk. But the fire, the body, I saw... You saw what they needed you to see, she cut in, her voice firm, the old steel returning. I knew Dragon was on to me. I knew he had hired that pathetic, dirty cop to watch me. I was a loose end, so I needed to disappear. I needed to draw Dragon out, make him sloppy, make him think the threat was gone. You faked your death, I whispered, the scale of it hitting me. I staged my death, she corrected. I set the fire. The body was a donation from a friend at the medical school morgue. Sometimes, Ava, you have to burn down the library to save the books. I could not speak. My mind was reeling. I planned my part, she continued. I knew Dragan was the target, and I knew I was not the only one who wanted him. I had a partner. A partner who... The man with the gray eyes, she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I went to Luca Moretti 6 months ago. Before the fire, I showed him what I had. The files linking Dragan to Elisa's murder. I gave him the choice. Help me get justice for his sister, or I would burn his entire empire to the ground, with him and Dragan still inside. He worked with you. He chose wisely, she said. He helped me stage my death. He helped me move to a safe location. He fed me information. I left the package for you, the key, the money. I knew you would not run. Ava, I knew you would dig. You were the only one I could trust to see it through. My entire journey, the breadcrumbs, the fear, it had not been an accident, it had been a setup. A carefully orchestrated plan between a mafia boss and a retired librarian. But Mia, I said, my head spinning. You told me he owed Mia. I thought... He does owe her, Aunt Rosa said, and her voice softened, losing its hard edge. He owes her the truth. A truth I think he is finally ready to tell. A truth I was not sure you were ready to hear until now. What truth? Ask him, she said. Ask Luca about Mia's father. The line clicked dead. She was gone. I did not wait. I ran from the office, down the stairs, and took a cab home. I found Luca in the kitchen, and he was not making coffee. He was making Mia a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, carefully cutting the crusts off. She is in bed, I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. She wanted a snack, he said simply, not looking up. I spoke to Aunt Rosa. I said... His hands stilled. He put the knife down. Slowly, he turned to face me. He did not look surprised. He just looked... tired. I figured she would call eventually, he said. She's not very good at staying quiet or being beige. I am told her safe house is beige. She said to ask you. I said, my heart pounding, about Mia's father. Luca closed his eyes for a moment. He leaned back against the counter. He looked vulnerable, stripped of all his armor. Mia is not just Elisa's daughter, he said, his voice low. Elisa. She was in love. The man my father hated, the man he forbade her from seeing. He was not just some civilian. He opened his eyes. They were clear and full of a deep, ancient sadness. He was a federal agent, Luca said. Undercover. His name was Michael. He was investigating my father's organization. He fell in love with Elisa, and she fell in love with him. I could not breathe. He was a Fed. Yes, they were going to run. The two of them, take Mia. They were going to go into witness protection. Michael was Elisa's contact. He was her way out, but Dragan, Dragan found out about both of them. He found out Michael was an agent and that Elisa was going to betray the family. My God, I whispered. Dragan arranged for Michael to be killed in the line of duty during a bust, a tip-off to the wrong people. It was a perfect assassination. 2 weeks later, he arranged Elisa's accident. He cleaned house. He took them both from me, from Mia. So Mia... She's the daughter of a federal agent and the niece of a mafia boss, Lucas said, his voice rough. I could not let anyone know, not Dragan, not my own family. If Dragan ever knew who her father really was, that she was the daughter of a Fed, she would never have been safe. He would have finished the job. So I hid the truth. I buried it. I claimed her as my ward and let the world think what it wanted. And Aunt Rosa, I said, the final piece clicking into place. Rosa was Elisa's godmother, he said, a small, sad smile touching his lips. Her secret godmother, the one person Elisa trusted. She was the only other person who knew the truth. She has been Mia's guardian angel, her protector, since the day she was born. She trusted me to keep the child safe. I trusted her to help me get the justice Elisa deserved. We stood in the silence of the kitchen, the weight of all those secrets settling around us. That day, I said, my voice quiet, the street fair, when you saw me holding her, after the shooting, you said, finally, someone real. He looked at me, and the sadness in his eyes was replaced by something else, a warmth. I remember, he said. I never understood it, I said. I thought you meant, I do not know, someone brave, someone not from your world. No, he said, shaking his head. He took a step closer, away from the counter. That is not what I meant, Mia. She is like your aunt. She is a barometer for truth. She is terrified of people who are lying, not lying to her, lying to themselves. She cannot be around them, the nannies, my staff. They were all pretending to be happy, pretending to be brave, pretending to be loyal. She felt the lie. She would scream. He looked into my eyes, and I felt like he was seeing me for the first time, all the way to the bottom. That day, you were terrified, he said. I could see it. You were shaking so hard you could barely speak. You were covered in stuffed banana fuzz. You were a complete mess, but you were not pretending. You were scared, and you were hiding us anyway. You were the first person in her entire life, besides me and Rosa, who was not lying to herself, and she knew it. She ran right to you. He reached out, his hand touching my cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear I did not know had fallen. That is what I saw. Ava, he whispered, not a hero, someone real. I leaned into his hand. I finally understood. Realness was not about having a clean record, or a perfect life, or a suit of armor. It was not about being unafraid. It was about what you did with your darkness. It was about being scared and being messy and doing the right thing anyway. I realized that kindness, the kind that matters, is not a decoration. It is not something you put on like a suit. It is a discipline. It is a choice you make over and over when it is hard, when it costs you, and when no one is watching. I do not have an empire, Ava, he said, his voice a low rumble. I do not have the houses, or the cars, or the millions. I gave it all up. All I have left is this apartment, my new company, and a lot of work to do. I know, I said. It is better this way. I'm asking you to share it, he said. He was not kneeling. He did not pull out a velvet box with a diamond ring. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple key ring. It was heavy. This, he said, holding up a plain silver key, is for the apartment, this one. He held up a brass key, is for the ArcLight Fund office. I had a copy made. He paused, then held up the last one, a heavy, industrial-looking key, a high-security key. And this, he said, is for the data vault, my vault, the new one, the forensic security company. It is all I am. It is all I have. I want you to have all the keys. I looked at the keys, shining in his hand, a home, my work, and his secrets. It was the most honest proposal in the history of the world. I smiled, my tears finally stopping. Yes, I said, but slowly. Before the first snow of winter, I went back to St. Agnes Church. It was empty on a Tuesday afternoon. It smelled the same: incense, lemon polish, and quiet. I walked to the rows of votive candles, the small, flickering prayers of light in the darkness. I lit two, one for Elisa Moretti, a woman I never knew but whose daughter I loved, one for Michael, the brave, nameless agent who had been her father. I stood there until they were burning steadily, two small flames against the shadow. I turned and walked out of the heavy wooden doors, stepping into the bright, cold afternoon. He was waiting for me, Luca, and he was holding her hand. When Mia saw me, she let go of his hand. She ran, not with the frantic, desperate terror of the street fair, but with the pure, unbridled, thundering joy of the playground. She hit my legs, a small, perfect impact. And this time, I did not freeze. I did not hesitate. I knelt on the cold pavement and I wrapped my arms around her, burying my face in her dark, curly hair that smelled like apples. And for the first time in my life, I hugged her back, and I was not afraid. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where in the world you are tuning in from. Please, leave a comment below to say hello. Share your thoughts and connect with other listeners. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and like this video. It truly helps us out. And do not forget to support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people. We appreciate you.